Uh, this is the second episode we're doing of IPFS and coffee, where I'm gonna sit here and make coffee and talk about something IPFS related. This week I'm gonna talk about the Files API and more past that, like the MFS implementation and file system in general. Also, I'm gonna be making coffee in what's called a Chemex. It's a type of pour-over device, if anybody's ever used those. It's pretty good. It's what I do pretty much every day for coffee. I have water boiling, and I already ground some beans, so while that's happening, I will start talking about what the Files API is. So in Dev 040, we have this new thing called IPFS files. It's a command you can type, and it provides a lot of Unix-like commands to you. So you can do move, copy, read, write files, make dir, and ls. And it deals in IPFS like objects, but it abstracts a lot of the busy work away from you of dealing with hashes and worrying about updating chains. So if I change a file, I also have to update its directory and the directory above it and above that. And the Files API just abstracts all that away for you, and it just does it. So it's really cool. It's also moderately fast. We recently switched IPFS add to use the same code in the backend, and it got way faster, at least 100 times faster for most workloads, which is a pretty good gain in my book. The way it works underneath is it implements essentially just a virtual file system. Each node in memory has its Merkle-DAG node tied to it. And then when you add children to it, it will add children to the virtual node, and then when it gets flushed, those children get synced and hashed, and then that hash gets added to the node's virtual bit, and then written to its DAG node, synced and hashed, and then all the way up the chain. And that's only happens as needed. So there's a lot of opportunities, so you can write multiple files under a directory, and then only have to sync up once, which results in only hashing the tree up once instead of twice. Saves us a lot of time. So there's lots of opportunities for different applications to be built on this. The one thing I'm working on kind of as a side project, because I'm not good at JavaScript, is a JavaScript-based web file explorer. So it looks just like, you click on Windows Explorer, open it up, your files pop up, just like that, but for IPFS. And it works-ish right now. It's really ugly because I have no design skills whatsoever. I'm pretty sure it's black, white, and gray. But it's the cool thing about it is that you're able to in the web browser, you're able to click your files, you're able to drag files into it, to add them to it, able to drag directories into it, navigate through directories, traverse this file system that is on IPFS. And just looking to provide some sort of cool interface to view your files, which is something we don't quite have yet. We have the fuse interface, but that's not mutable, except for IPNS, which is slightly more than you want for just managing a couple files on your file system. So that's kind of what it is. The history behind it is I started building this, and it started out with a lot more features than it has now. Quite a bit of feature creep, but there's a lot of ideas there that I really wanted to work towards, and I still want to work towards in the future. And the idea is we have this file system space, and the file system space is agnostic. And then you can mount IPFS things into it. So I could say mount this IPFS hash onto a path in this file system, and then you can CD into it, and then you'd be in IPFS. You could also then mount an IPNS hash into the file system at some point, and then you could CD into it and change files there, and it would automatically know to update that IPNS entry. And then you could do things you could make pipes was the really cool thing I wanted. So you could call make pipe in your file system, and it would produce a hash, and anybody else who was able to cat that hash or write to that hash would communicate with the same people. So if I catted the hash and David wrote to the hash, then I would see his data over the network seamlessly. And that's one of the ideas I have. And there's a lot of different things you can do with kind of a general file system like this that's completely adaptable to whatever you want. Water's boiling. Okay, this is the fun part. Who cares about IPFS stuff, right? You just want to watch coffee. So, got a filter and put it in. Actually, it's pretty cool looking, like square shaped, and then this little triangle diamond thing. Just the filter out, and that. Take your beans. And let's see, kind of want to show this part, so I'm going to put my laptop over here. Maybe, yeah, that'll do. So the beans are in there. The first thing you do, it's actually like a very important part, is you get them just a little bit wet. And then you probably won't be able to see it because my webcam's pretty bad, but the beans will start to like puff up and rise and stuff, and it's called a bloom. And this is like all the CO2 in the beans like leaving, and it has the effect of kind of making it all expand. Also smells amazing. So you let that happen for about 30 seconds, and then what you do is, oh my God, who guessed? Pour water into it. And kind of just fill it up, pour circularly until it gets to the top of the vase type thing. Actually, I don't know what it's really called. It's just a Chemex. And then once it hits the top, I just pour slowly into the middle until I've poured my water through. And this makes about 3 cups, like not like cups, the measurement cups, but 3 like cups how much I drink cups of coffee. And it's pretty quick, easy to clean up. All you do is take this little paper filter right here and toss it. Then it's pretty much clean. It's made out of like a nice glass that doesn't stain or anything, so I've really never had to actually heavy-duty clean it. And that's it. I just wait for it to now my laptop is needing to find a new home. All right. That was much faster than last time. So, yeah, that was just my daily, like, that's what I do every morning to make coffee, or rather, what my roommate does when he wakes up before I do. So yeah, back to the IPFS files and MFS stuff. So the current implementation is like the base core concepts of what we need, and then later on we're going to take what we have here and build it into a more general, like, single file system with, really cool global pathing features, which is really what Juan is a huge fan of, is having paths be able to describe anything. So like you could say like /SSH, a host, maybe a port or whatever, and then /something, /something. So you're building these paths through all these different transports, and paths and file systems go hand in hand. So if you build that type of thing that Juan's thinking of into a file system, you're going to get a lot of really interesting things, and honestly, it's something I don't even know what to expect once we get there. It's just kind of so abstract and out there, but it's also very close and attainable. It's just going to take probably another few months of churning through work to get it something like that working. So the IPFS Files API right now is being used to do a couple of cool things. The biggest one right now is what David's working on, is the registry mirror. And it's taking all of NPM, all the packages and everything, and storing it on IPFS. and then every single user can open up the registry mirror program, run their IPFS daemon, and then you'll be able to install packages from your local daemon, all through IPFS and all through the IPFS Files API. And I feel like David really wants to say something right now because I'm probably botching this. David, you want to like?
Yeah, I was going to actually just had an idea. Since we already know, like, so system for the Files API has to be smart enough to know when to update the molecular nodes that are above in the chain each time we change a file in the subdirectory. Um, will we have, or have we thought about something like a hook where we can say each time this directory changes because there is some file added or some file changes underneath, just update this IPNS record directly so that we don't have to like force MFS to flush in order to update that IPNS.
So that was actually, that exact functionality was in the earlier versions of the Files API that I had written. We took a lot of that out because it was one PR and it was massive, and Juan and I were trying to figure out what this should look like for the first iteration. So that behavior is like definitely planned, and it's definitely something that's going to be there. So we just got to get around implementing it. Put it in the queue of things to do and hope it gets to the top quickly. But yeah, that's like the way I had it was you could mount. So there was like an IPFS, back then it was called MFS mount, and that would accept a couple arguments. One of them was like the thing you're mounting, and one of them was a publish command. And so that's a shell command that gets called when that node needs to be updated. So when all the changes below it bubble up to that node, the command that you specified there was called, and then it would do things. So for IPNS, you would mount the IPNS thing, and then the update command would be IPFS name publish, that hash. And in other cases, you could just write it to your database, or you could message somebody because of it. And so there's a lot of really cool applications you get when you allow that to be really generic. Gotta pull myself cut.
That's really cool. So one other question to bring into the discussion is that like we have been like posting here and there about like changing, like removing cat and add from like as a core command, and like just using the files one. So like always using IPFS files cat, IPFS files add, and make those the primary cat and add. But that also like that definitely gives users something way more familiar than what they are used with normal file systems, but also means that like everyone will start creating directories inside their IPFS repos that I might not be expecting from the beginning, right? Because then I cannot add two files from the same directory without having them as separate files in IPFS.
So one thing I was thinking of, similar lines, like I don't know if we should take IPFS add and cat out of like the main commands, but this like similar vein. I'm thinking when you run IPFS add and it does, it pins afterwards, right? But everybody always loses track of the things that they've pinned. So my idea is every time you add, it can. Well, okay, this isn't my idea. Somebody in IRC mentioned this and brought it up, and I thought it was a great idea. Every time you add, it takes the name of the file that you added, and maybe the date or something, and then writes that as an entry into the Files API. So in the Files API, you'd have like /pins/ the name of the file, date, or whatever. And that way, it's really easy just to look in there and remember, oh, here are all the things I added. I think that's going to be a great thing to have, because that kind of solves our long-standing problem of what the hell did I add, and what is this pin? We could even make pinls do a little bit of reverse searching in MFS or the Files API to actually like grab the names from there and put them in the display for pinls, which that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, and that also will make a lot of things easier. For example, for the web UI or station, to have the
Yeah.
list of things that were added to the network, and that's for end users will be just like great. Like everyone will understand what they have added to the IPFS node. They will be able to delete it directly, right? Because unpinning something that you don't remember that you have pinned is also a problem.
Yeah. And then we'll be able to get rid of the local storage on the web UI. Because like right now we use local storage for storing what we pinned through the web UI, and it's like inconsistent with the CLI. And if we switch to the Files API stuff there, then we can solve that problem pretty cleanly. So yeah.
Just to be sorry to interrupt. Just to be clear on how delete would work in that case, right? Would delete be still just unpinning, or would we actually have a way of fully removing the file? Just for example, I added by accident this large file, and I just want to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what we'd have to do there is we could make delete, like, in the web UI, we could make delete actually unpin and like delete those blocks, but we would also have to check to make sure it wasn't pinned by anything else. Otherwise, we're breaking things. So like we can say delete, and then if it removes that pin and then then it should check the pin set and say, hey, is this pinned through anything else? And if it is, then we, give an error to the user, and if not, then we can wipe those blocks from the block store. Which I think actually wiping blocks like that is going to be a good thing, kind of gives users a little more feel for things happen when I want them to. So yeah, Files API is pretty cool. Pretty happy with it. I know David is too. And do you guys have any other questions about that?
I don't have any at the moment, no, or anything that I'm. Also, I'm not like remembering anything that you might have missed. That would be good to bring up to discussion. So yeah, I think like definitely like a Files API is like one of the things that enables a lot of use cases, and actually like looking backwards is kind of like simple and makes a lot of sense. Well, I guess like the implementation is very complicated though to make all this work. but
Full-blown.
yeah. So yeah.
The other thing that's kind of related that I've been wanting to do is I wrote some code for a thing called IPFS pipe a while back. And IPFS pipe was basically just a wrapper around our network layer, so you could listen in on like a service name, and then you could dial up here at a service name through the CLI. And I never got around to finishing it because our commands library had a few limitations around that. But there's a PR somewhat recently to actually like fix that, and it looks like it works. And so I want to be able to get that type of functionality worked in, so you can like create a pipe and then have other people connect to it, because I want to be able to take that and move it into a file system interface. And maybe even once we get PubSub, which that's coming, it's going to happen. Once we get PubSub, you could have a pipe that just printed out everything for PubSub. So it could be like that kind of file type interface to PubSub, which I like files. It's related. So yeah, unless you guys have anything else to ask me or talk about or discuss.
I have one question, right? So Files API is going to be released in 04.
Mm-hmm.
A, when is 04 coming? Just to tease everyone. And B, is the set of features like done that will ship for 04 for the Files API, or is that still a work in progress?
So the Files API right now, I have no intentions of changing its feature set by 040 by the time that ships. To go back to your first question, there are a couple small-ish things that I want to get done before shipping 040. The first of which that I can remember off the top of my head is when we add a file, we use a particular chunking scheme. So like we use a certain layout and a certain block chunking algorithm. I want to take that information and write it to the root block of the created file, so that in the future you can use that information to recreate the exact same DAG. Because, you know, in the future maybe we change some default chunking schemes and you re-add a file, it's going to give you a different hash, and that's weird. But if we write the exact parameters used into the file, then we'll be able to recreate it exactly, and, you know, it provides a lot of cooler guarantees. I think that's really important for us to get because it changes the file format, and I want that to be in 040 because it's kind of like almost a breaking change, but it doesn't break anything, it just changes the hash values of things. So that's one of the things on my list. There's one other, I don't quite remember what it is off the top of my head, but we're getting really close. We shipped UTP support in 040 either yesterday or the day before. So if you're using 040, you can use UDP-based transports, and it works, and it's pretty cool. And actually, if any of you are watching and using 040, I definitely recommend you trying that out and giving me some feedback on how that's working. Because it worked great when I tested it, but maybe it like catches fire on somebody else's computer. Who knows? It probably won't. Yeah, so 040, I'm hoping we can ship before or around New Year's. Just, it's kind of like my hope.
That's awesome.
So we're shipping it on 32C3 last day, or what?
You'd see me at the Chaos Congress in the corner, hacking away on something. We're gonna ship.
Yeah.
Jeromy, you coming to the Congress? No, we gotta ship. But yeah, I would be so happy if we can get it out the door by the time 2016 rolls around. I'm pretty confident we can do it too. The only real like pinch points, aside from those features that I want to get, are the FS repo migrations, which are getting close, and then getting the dist.ipfs.io stuff up and deployed. Basically, the whole upgrade path and installation path we want to smooth out before we, drop a big change on everybody that requires a lot of, migrations and new things to learn. But yeah, I think I'm confident we can get that done in the next, what do we have, like 2-3 weeks? What's the date today? The 11th, yeah, like 3 weeks-ish. So, yeah, fingers crossed.
Exciting.
Cool. So, I think it'll be good for us to keep these talks like right around half an hour or so. So this is a good length, and thank you all for watching. Enjoy.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Thank you, Jeromy.